All right.
Welcome to the MimeCast, and today we have the most amazing and wonderful Andrea Snow. To have a chance to get to know her a little bit better. So, how are you doing, Andrea?
I'm doing just fine. Pandemic notwithstanding.
Yeah, lot of. It's like I haven't seen a bunch of sick people, and I'm glad that I haven't seen a lot of sick people. But I definitely like whenever someone's not wearing a mask, I'm like, what's wrong with you? You know,
Right,
how,
right.
haven't you been paying any attention at all? Eh, we will see. We'll see what happens. And it's once we get through the vaccine slash coup of the next few
Yeah,
months.
yeah.
God.
How's that president, huh?
Yeah, really. But whoever that happens to be at any given point, we shall see. But anyway, so as I said, this is about you. So I want to ask, be getting to know you better. So the first
Mm.
question is, of course, where were you born?
I was born in Canoga Park, which is in Los Angeles.
Hmm.
It's at the northwest end of the San Fernando Valley.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty agricultural when I was born, and pretty completely suburban by in no time.
Now, when you say agriculture, you mean there were still farms and stuff?
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, on
Cool.
farms, maybe more like maybe not old-fashioned farms as much as fields that were under cultivation, and
Mm-hmm.
work crews went around to them, and it's not like there was a barn and horses and.
Right.
Well, I was born onto a no longer functioning poultry ranch, chicken ranch.
Really?
Yeah,
Huh.
yeah.
And were your parents were poultry farmers or raisers or whatever they're called? Chicken
No,
folks? Oh.
my chicken folks. Well, that's what I come from, a long line of chicken folks. No, they were veterinarians.
Really? Both of them?
Yeah. Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Wow.
My mother first, and
Mm-hmm.
then she kind of put my father through veterinary school,
Mm-hmm.
and he uh, he graduated right at the end of the Second World War, and they came back to Canoga Park, where my grandparents had retired to this chicken ranch,
Hmm.
and it was uh, so my folks came there, and they transformed part of the house into a clinic. So they saw dogs and cats
Mm-hmm.
at the house. Basically, people, it's a little bit like the COVID thing. People lined up, they had to wait in their cars. And when it was their turn, they came in with their animal and then drove on. But so this ranch had connected with it about 10 acres of land that was under cultivation, but um, nobody in my family was in charge of that.
Now, where
Uh,
did your parents meet?
in Hollywood, my mother
Like
worked at
you
a
do.
dog and huh? Well, like what?
Like you do. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Um, my mother was a doctor, a new doctor, working
Mm.
at, like, I mean, a newbie doctor, working at a dog and cat hospital in Hollywood. And my father was a kennel man there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how they met.
Hmm. So so she was you were saying was she was already a veterinarian? I'm sorry. Could you hold on for just a second? I'm so sorry. I have to close a door. Just a
Oh,
second. Sorry about that. At this exact moment, Valina is like doing a recording in the other room. She's doing a Zoom recording of with an interview, and so it just so happened they started at the same time and the doors were open. Oh yeah, so I wasn't clear. So you were saying she was a movie doctor? Was she was already
Yes, she did have eventually. She did have dog and cat. She had dog stars for patients.
Really?
That's
Wow.
Later in her
That's
story.
a lot of pressure.
Not really.
Really? I would think that it's like, because being a vet is so different from being a human doctor, because with human doctors, you just deal with humans. They're different sizes, but everything's about the same. Whereas with vets, you have to have this broad range of knowledge, and they can never tell you where it hurts.
I know.
And I figure if you're doing movies, they're like, here's this dog or cat that's, starring in this film. You can't talk to it, and we've got to give it back on set. And you can't ask it questions. There's the whole psychological part of being a doctor just isn't there. You're just petting them a lot.
Right. No, you have to look for other signs. You're right. You're absolutely right. They can't tell you, Doc, it hurts when I move like this. Oh man.
Yeah.
They can't
It hurts when I bark. Don't bark so much.
We need bark lessons. May I suggest a good bark therapist?
Yeah. Really. So now she was doing that, and your father,
But she was not doing well. I don't think they had celebrity dogs at the Hollywood Dog and Cat Hospital. I'm not even sure what it was called, but it was right there in Hollywood. No, her patient that I'm skipping forward to the to the celebrity animals much later on in her practice. The only one I can remember, and I know there was more than just this one, was he was like a stunt double for Old Yeller. You remember Old Yeller?
Yes, yes.
You're too young.
The stunt double for Old Yeller. Wow.
Yeah, that was one of them. Celebrity dogs.
Would not have occurred to me that you needed that. But okay. I would have figured they just have a few dogs.
Oh, they do. They do. And maybe he was one of the Old Yellers, but I think he did amazing stunts too. Wow. I mean, maybe he took a bullet well or something.
Oh God! So he's the dog they shot in the end.
No, not really. He just could pretend.
Well, let's take two. Get another dog.
Like he's another color, but we can.
Close enough. He's old yellowish.
Old Rusty. We're gonna call the show now.
Right. He's old goldenrod. We'll fix it in post.
Right.
So how did your parents actually meet?
Probably over a dog or something. They worked at the same hospital. It's just my father was what they call a kennel man, which means an all-around assistant. You could somebody who mainly maybe will hold an animal while you're doing a procedure, or bathe an animal, or mop the floor, clean the cage, or feed the animals, or something like that.
So they were both already interested in the field when they met, and then he went on to become a vet also.
Right, but he didn't complete high school, he was he came from a very large, itinerant family. His father was a chef, and he and his family moved around a lot. And he was the oldest child in what became an extremely large family, and he and his next brother ran away a lot. They were sort of they were on their own when they were 13 and 11 for a while, but they'd come back. Anyway, he didn't finish high school, And
Mhm.
so, but he was really smart and he liked to read. And as my mother said, she couldn't stand to see a brilliant mind go to waste. So she helped him go on, and get his GED. And then back in those days, there were only two veterinary colleges in west of the Mississippi. There was the one she went to in Pullman, Washington, and the one he went to in Fort Collins, Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
Both places where I toured with the Mime Troupe.
Yeah, I was thinking Fort Collins. Wait a minute.
Yeah.
So did they get married and then move to Fort Collins while he was in
Mm-hmm.
school?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right.
How long was that?
I guess probably about 4 years, I guess.
Wow. Mm.
You know,
And then they
the
came
two went
back. Oh, go ahead.
to Canoga Park.
Yeah.
She was very beloved by her clients.
Mm-hmm.
And she always said, whenever I asked her, or they said, did you ever face any discrimination? Did you ever have difficulty as a woman veterinarian? Was there ever a problem? And she could say, I think about her practice. Absolutely never. She had respect of her colleagues, her clients. That's what you call and animals. The animals were the patients.
Oh,
Their
and the person's the client.
their owners were the clients. Um, her clients, flocked. They adored her. But I recently found out before she died, she was on the receiving end of just incredible discrimination in Colorado. She could not. Here she was at a veterinary college. She
Mm-hmm.
couldn't find employment there or in anything surrounding, like in the 100-mile range. What veterinarians often did in those days was work for or meat inspectors. They inspected
Oh.
animals on their way to be
Mm-hmm.
slaughtered, stuff like
Right.
that. Or you're taking care of dairy cows, or you're
Mm-hmm.
taking care of sick horses. Or she could not find any employment because we don't have women doing that.
Right.
So they did
More
not.
cowboy mentality.
They did not trust her to do a good job. So she ended up working in a human doctor's office,
Hmm.
and kind of doing everything, but on
Mm-hmm.
humans.
Right.
And getting shot.
You don't have to check the udders as much, but
No, but
yeah.
no, not so much.
So so he was in school and she was working for a doctor in Fort
Mm-hmm,
Collins.
mm-hmm.
Um, but they were there together, which is important when it snows. Um, and so when they came back to Canoga Park, uh, was their plan always to like set up their own practice there,
Mm-hmm,
or
mm-hmm,
yeah?
mm-hmm.
Now, did
Right.
they have when they set?
Well,
Were they like
now
what?
I was going to say when they came back, it was after the Second World War, and there was no, there was no real estate. There were
Mm,
There was no place they could open a practice except in my grandparents',
in the house?
bedroom.
Oh
It was a
gosh.
bed. They no longer slept there. Actually,
I would hope not.
but yes, and it wasn't until 1940. This was 45, the tail end of 45, uh, that they came back. And that's when I was born, the tail end of 45.
Mhm.
I'm about to have my 75th birthday next month, Michael.
Wow. Congratulations. I have to
Thank
send
you.
you things now. Um, see,
Um,
that's just more proof that mime trooping keeps you young.
oh, that's it.
Uh,
And they didn't get another place until 1949 when they
mm,
built this little Quonset hut, which is these kinds of structures that all we have is tin. So that's where they had their first dog and cat hospital that wasn't at the old chicken ranch.
was it nearby, or did they find their own
Yeah, it was
space?
all in Canoga Park.
Uh-huh. Wow. So you grew up in do you have siblings?
No, no, I
Only child.
have, huh? Sort of. I have a half brother who's a lot older,
Mm-hmm.
and I have a younger sister who died pretty much at birth,
Mm.
and that's that. So I pretty much grew up
So you
by
grew up
myself.
by yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now, being a mere tot in Canoga Park with parents who are always working with animals,
Hmm.
was that cool or annoying or just stinky?
Absolutely cool. It was totally cool, and
Mm-hmm.
I had animals of my own. I hung out at the hospital a lot. You know,
Mm-hmm.
in fact,
Did you did you
that's
think you
where
were maybe going to grow up to be a veterinarian?
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I thought for a long time, that that's what I do.
Mm-hmm.
But I should tell you, I did my first performing uh, at the dog and cat hospital.
Really?
The- yes, yes.
What was
The
that?
animal, the animals were in cages, in the
Like
ward
a
where
good
they were
audience.
captive, you
Yes.
might
Very captive
say.
audience. Yes.
And they were bored, even if they were sick and recovering from surgery, they were kind of bored or and I felt sort of sorry for them. So I did a show in front of the cages for the dogs and cats, and they loved it. I have to
So good.
say, some of my best work.
Now, did you do this on a regular basis, or did you just every once in a while?
Every once in a while, yeah,
More seasonal
as
work then.
yeah, I was there all the time, but I didn't always put on a show.
Mm. So you're always helping your parents?
Hmm. Hmm. And even when I was older, I really helped. I mean, I helped with surgery and
Really?
mhm,
Wow. So you're really
doing things.
serious about wanting to become a vet.
Yeah, yeah. And when I did it, they really needed my help. It might be after hours doing some kind of surgery that entailed I would sprinkle the sulfa drug. Now, is this before penicillin?
Yeah.
Do they still
Or
use sulfa drug? I mean, there might be an incision, and I'd have to sprinkle uh, something
yeah.
in the wound. And sometimes I helped with when my mother would be suturing something up. I'd clip
Got the
the sutures, and I mean, because she'd be holding things together,
yeah.
and I would
Now,
listen.
I wonder, I always thought that, like, I mean, it's very, very, very difficult emotionally to be a doctor because you're constantly dealing with people at their worst. And if you can't help them, it's very difficult. And for vets, I feel like in some ways it's worse because you can't even explain to the animal what's going on. And if they pass away, you can't, it's hard to comfort them. What was that like as a child being around, it's like you're there and there are the bunnies and the cats and the dogs and stuff, and some of them aren't going to make it. And as a kid, it would seem like that would be particularly difficult.
Well, you remind me of something. one of the things that veterinarians do is put down animals that, for one reason or another, their owners can't keep, or they're too sick or something.
Mm-hmm.
There was a litter of puppies was delivered, and the owners didn't want them. They didn't want to put them up for adoption. They didn't want to. They just put them down, and so they were given a little injection of, whatever it was. But they really did go to sleep. When you say put them to sleep, it was a pretty humane way to go. And but I found the little puppies really close to what they call the dead can, where the dead animals would go.
Mm-hmm.
And I took them out of the dead can. I tried as hard as I could to bring them back to life. And I poured water in their little mouths and rubbed them, but I couldn't. They were gone. But
How old were you?
I had to be like, I'm gonna say 4.
Oh, that's hard.
Well, yes. I mean, I had an extremely kind mother who could, I mean, I was discovered with the dead puppies, and there was a way she had of talking about it that was, I could reconcile myself to it. It was just fine.
Yeah, that's.
But
Yeah,
I think
a lot to learn.
There's a skill to talking to the clients about their pets, who were like oftentimes members of the family. So there's a way to help them through the loss of an animal. And then there's a way to be with the animals. It's just sort of I get them. Not just being an animal whisperer. I mean, you don't have to be the alpha being in the room. It's just you can comfort them, and you kind of, you can comfort them, and they pick up on it. They get it. I think animals a lot tend to look to humans for help. You're going to help me through this, or you're going to help me out of it in a good. Well, I think probably contemplating death is a pretty terrifying idea for any creature, but they tended to look to you for help, and maybe we're going to help them make a peaceful exit. You were good.
So, where did you go to school?
Yeah, transition. Well, Vicky.
Yeah, no, because I was thinking you're dealing with all of this. On the one hand, you're dealing with real life and death issues, and you're just in elementary school, so your experience would be so different. That's why I was like, what was that like to have, you're being a little kid, you're dealing with life and death, and you're kind of having a job. And what were how did you deal with the other children?
Great. I mean, they were kind of separate universes, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
I think kids sometimes thought I had the coolest life. And at some point, I had a lot of animals that were my pets. And that was really cool. So I think other kids thought that, I'm assuming, God, it would be a shock to find out otherwise. That, how nice you have folks who are with animals, and you have some animals, and let's play hopscotch.
Did you ever bring any of your animals to school and do like, here's a lamb, let me tell you about that, to kind of do reports and stuff?
No, but I could have, because I had a lamb.
See, that's what I'm talking about. So now, when you were saying you were performing for the animals, were you Was that like when
Yeah,
you when
I was really young for that. That was
right?
like really young, about the same time as the puppies,
Oh God, the
you know.
puppies. That's going to be in my mind now forever. Thanks. Well, I asked because like I remember the first time that I really kind of performed in any way where it was really like a thing.
Mhm,
I was like 5, and
mhm.
I wasn't performing. It was like we were going to the airport to pick my mother up. She had gone to back to Detroit to visit her family, so we went to the airport to pick her up. And while we were waiting for the plane, I started doing impersonations of people that were walking around, and a crowd started to gather. And so as the crowd started to gather, I started to do more and more improvisational comedy. And I'm just cracking jokes and I'm riffing and I'm doing stuff and I'm playing different characters and I'm doing all of this stuff. And which was nothing but embarrassing to my father, who was trying to stand at the back of the crowd and pretend like he did not know me at all. Um, but it really became like this little like improv performance. It went on for some time. And that was the first, I always think back to that. That was like the first time I was really like, this is fun. Um,
Uh-huh.
so that, I mean, that's why it stands out so much in my memory. I didn't perform, for a few years after that. But now, so when did you start feeling like
Well, I
perform?
had to
How did you start making that transition? Was it writing, directing, acting, just creating?
well, I also had, when a little bit older, but I have to say, I had an insanely appreciative audience there in the kennel.
Hmm.
I mean, I
Yeah,
really got great, great audience feedback.
yeah.
Um,
Even the howling is positive.
oh man, It- not since then. I haven't I haven't had an audience do
You need
that.
more cages for the crowd.
Yeah. Um, no, well, uh, we moved away from the ranch
Hmm.
to a tract home, my mother and father and I. When I was um, turning 5, I guess, just
Mm.
about turning 5. Um, and my next door, over the back fence next door, neighbor friend turned out to be my very best friend, a little girl, exactly my age. And we did shows together. After,
Really?
when I guess, I don't know how old, 9, we started maybe when we were 9 or so. And for a few years, did shows for our parents and her brother.
Hmm.
And my mother thought, this thing would be better if you included some refreshments. Will there be refreshments? And so my girlfriend's little brother came for the refreshments, but he was always there. Um, and so we did a show twice a year, and it was always
Really?
yeah, and it was always a serious play and a comedy and a musical comedy.
Wow. And
Uh,
were you writing these or were you finding stuff or what?
we were writing them,
Wow.
so they were little actos, like little
Mm.
actos, and we totally cracked ourselves up. Well, we were performing, of course. So
Hmm.
this was probably pure torture for the audience.
Yeah,
There
I'm
we
sure they
were
have.
rolling on the floor instead of performing. But
Hmm. And you always, it
yeah,
was just the two of you all that time?
yeah,
Wow. So
well,
was the audience always the same, the parents and the brother, or did they invite other people? Did they seem proud of you in addition to the concessions?
I don't know. I'm not sure. I think they kind of put up with it. It was a doubles. I think they call that a doubles act, right? In vaudeville,
Yeah.
wasn't that it?
Yeah.
We had a doubles act.
Huh. So, because I wonder, like, I was a little kid in LA until
Oh,
I think we moved when I was like 7. Um, and
when? Where?
I've tried to find the places where we lived because we moved a lot in Los Angeles. Went to like Hillcrest Elementary and then some other elementary school and until we basically, it's a long story, had to move to somewhere, and my parents picked San Francisco. Um,
Mhm.
but I just remember that all of the other kids, if anybody was like, "Hey, we're doing a little act," there was always this, Hollywood's right over there kind of
Oh,
aspect to it, and which was either frightening for the parents or exciting for the parents.
mhm.
Did your parents ever think, "Oh God, she's performing," or "Hey, she's performing"?
No, not at that point. Hollywood was far away. I
Mm,
did live in Hollywood, though, as a teenager. Um, my parents had split up, and
mhm,
years later, my mother remarried, and We moved to Hollywood, which is where my
mhm.
stepfather lived, and he had clients who were in the business and were miserable. So it was like, it's like,
He was also a veterinarian.
no, he was a psychologist. I'm sorry. He
Oh,
was a psychologist.
I was
And
thinking when you said clients, I was thinking so the people who own the pets are
no,
miserable. That's just pitiful. The pet
my
can't make you
dog,
happy.
my
Yeah,
dog was
my dog's
was getting
cheating on
lots
me.
of callbacks.
Yeah,
And
making me feel
never,
like a loser. So he as a psychologist.
he
I'm sorry,
had
did you say psychologist or psychiatrist?
psychologist,
Psychologist. Okay,
psychologist.
okay, the sane ones. Um,
Mhm.
so
The ones without drugs.
yeah, right. And so now, and this is when you were a teen. No, so when your parents had your parents had their Quonset hut practice, which they had to then split up. And so your mother meets this person. And so what was that? That's a big shift, Canoga Park Pet Hospital to Hollywood. And was your mother still veterinizing in Hollywood?
No, no. So this was about 10 years from the Quonset, from the building of the, I'm doing the math now, from the
Hmm.
building of the Quonset hut to the time that she married uh, my stepfather. That was 10 years.
Hmm.
Um, and he was quite a bit older
Hmm.
and uh, 20 years older than she.
Wow.
So, and when we moved in, all of us together, his mother was living with us.
Hmm.
So there was like a huge age range of
Yeah,
just
that's
four
like
people.
4 generations.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Um,
Wow.
so where were we?
So
Anyway,
yeah.
so she was retired when
Oh.
we moved. She retired in order to make the move and hang out.
Mm-hmm.
And my stepfather was getting close to retirement himself, but he was still practicing.
Uh-huh. So what was that like suddenly having your mother hang out? Because
Well, a couple of things. Uh, One was I was so surprised she wasn't going to continue to work because she was great at it.
mm-hmm.
She loved it. It was her identity. Um, what's not to like? I couldn't believe that she wasn't going to continue doing that. And the reason probably is because he didn't want her to,
Mm,
really. I mean, I'm not sure that they talked about it. I'm
mm-hmm.
not sure they said, well, it's because I'm a man of my generation. I don't
No.
want my woman working. I mean, that is how, you know, people were thinking then,
Right.
back then.
Yeah, and
And
he's a
God knows.
generation older than her, so.
Mhm. But even then, um, men of my mother's generation also felt like if you don't have, unless the family was desperate for money, the ideal was a wife of mine is going to work. You
Hmm.
stay home, run, and eat bonbons. I had a boyfriend once who thought, you could read magazines and eat bonbons. He said it. It was kind of a anyway. My stepfather never said that.
But
Uh,
that was kind of the cultural norm that it's like your mother fell
yeah.
into.
Well, what a time that was the cultural norm that
Hmm.
time. That was Norman time, Nime, the
Yeah,
norm of the time.
the norm of the
Kind of,
time.
kind of like Mad Men. That was
Hmm.
it.
Yeah.
You had to be alluring,
Hmm.
but not in charge.
Right.
Insanely competent, but not in charge.
But not a job.
Um, yeah, but my stepfather was very, very cool. Um, and I got to say, he was progressive. He was that his politics were kind of lefty, not lefty, lefty the way we mean lefty, maybe, but
But lefty for the period. Adlai
yeah,
Stevenson lefty.
yeah, you got it. He
Yeah.
was, Roosevelt
Yeah.
Democrat, Adlai Stevenson.
Now have you?
Although
Oh, go ahead.
later on, he and I could joke about Uncle Carl, meaning Karl Marx. He thought that
Yeah.
was funny. Anyway, um, so so he was. I mean, he opened my vistas to a lot of things. He was
Mhm.
cool. I
Was your
I
mother political at all before she married him?
she, she worked.
That you
Well,
noticed?
that she noticed. She- when earlier
Hmm.
in an earlier time, I think everybody was a little bit, everybody in her family was a Democrat. It was the Depression, it was the war. Things this was a time. Oops. Well, I almost whoo. Um this this was a time to all pull together some,
Hmm.
the war and everything. But after that, she was so busy working that
Mm.
I don't think she paid attention very much, and neither did my father. Um, and
Hmm.
I think he decided he was a Republican,
Hmm.
and he stayed a Republican.
Hmm.
But my mother was too busy to do very much else except work.
Hmm.
And so I was on my own a lot in Canoga Park. You asked
Hmm.
about what is it like to have her suddenly hanging around.
Yeah.
I was like, well, suddenly she's hanging around. This is cramping my style. I was so used to, even as a little kid, to being responsible for myself and being responsible for other things and kind of being in charge. And
Hmm.
suddenly I had my mother and my kind of step grandmother too.
Hmm.
So there were two people in line ahead of me for who's going to be in charge in the kitchen. Not me.
Right. And all up in your business, I'm
Yeah,
sure.
right.
So you were how old by then? Like 15?
13
13.
when we moved to Hollywood.
Ooh. So it's just at the point where, for most kids, that's when they're like finding their liberation for their chance to finally be out and doing stuff. And at that very point, your mother is suddenly wanting to be your buddy.
No, she already was my buddy. I mean, we got along brilliantly and always did to the end. We were really close.
Good.
But girlfriends is not it. That wasn't what it was, but we were very, very close.
So that was a big culture shift for you also, going just from Canoga Park to Hollywood, being in what, junior high at that point?
Which was
And,
right next door to a big studio,
oh,
as
really?
a matter of fact. And then on to Hollywood High School. The Hollywood High School. Yeah.
Hollywood High School.
Hollywood High School.
So, and you had to make all new friends, I'm assuming. So what was that like, trying to, one of the things that I found, a lot of the people that I've talked to, either some of them moved a lot. Some of them were, the children of immigrants. But a lot of them did have to keep reintroducing themselves through their lives in a way, kind of bringing performing as a way to, make friends or anything. So I wonder, like, when you got to high school, were you at Hollywood High still interested in performing?
Yeah. But as my elective, as my fun thing. And
were you still thinking of being a vet?
Yeah, although that kind of morphed away from veterinary medicine to more some sort of service thing for humans more by the time I graduated from high school. You bet. Hollywood High School had an ace drama department. The teacher was brilliant, and the students were fun and talented and weird and really smart, and really talented. So this brilliant drama teacher whipped us up into shape, and Hollywood High School won every district-wide competition in the fall and in the spring all the time. And we're kind of hated by the other schools. And then he went on to, after I left, he went on to Beverly Hills High School, and then retired and became a big daytime soap opera star.
Really?
And that's how he spent the last 20 years of his life, doing daytime television.
Wow. That's what you want in a way, to be able to, having teachers that actually know what they're doing makes a big difference. If they actually are gigging or go on to a gig, it just validates the things that they were talking about. So how much were you, now, this was your kind of hobby minor thing off to the side, but how much were you performing?
I didn't start right away. Well, there was, scene study, like drama classes, and then there was play production. And the department was so packed just that you really didn't rotate up to your time on stage until the others had kind of graduated.
Right.
So I didn't make the stage until the second half of my junior year.
Do you remember what your first play was that you did when you finally got to stage?
Oh, yes, we did the Crucible.
Ooh.
I think my character was Ann Putnam. Does that sound right? Some reactionary woman.
Right.
And we also did an evening of one acts. Are you remembering the Crucible? No, I saw you thinking, or maybe you were just frozen on the
I think I
screen.
might have just been frozen for a moment. But actually, I had a question about the Crucible. I mean, you were doing that was still a new play.
Mhm,
Did your did the department, did you guys talk about what it was about in terms of the politics of it?
mhm, mhm. Absolutely.
Oh,
Yeah.
cool.
And even maybe even hipper. The
Hmm.
next set of plays we did were avant-garde one acts
Mm,
that were brand new, you know,
wow.
the zoo story and the
Oh
sandbox
yeah.
and stuff like that.
Hmm. Wow. That's cool because normally yeah, I mean, I think nowadays things get so vetted for high schools that they're
Uh-huh.
not really allowed to do like the avant-garde, the obviously political, the things that are supposed to be changing them. They just want you to do something easy that no one will complain about. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. No, this was Hollywood. No, not a
just
problem.
Hollywood High. So,
And
yeah, so by the
then,
time you got to be a
yeah,
senior or you're graduating, were you starting to think more about, well, maybe I will do this performing thing?
well, also in my senior year, um, the music department asked me to sort of cross over and appear in a performance of The Music Man. So
Oh,
I did The Mayor's Wife, and
that's a
that
fun
was
part.
yeah, oh yeah, it was all fun. Um, that was the show that the talent scouts came to.
Ooh,
So by two agent types,
wow.
to see if I wanted to sign up or something.
Hmm.
And I can't tell you how quickly I said no because I wasn't, I was not interested at all. I mean, being in Hollywood, the movies by and large weren't thrilling. And, you know, the action was someplace else.
Mm.
Uh, like
And also, I
Berkeley.
guess if your stepfather's telling you how these people are all crazy, that's not helping.
Bringing it back around. It was not so much crazy as unhappy.
Unhappy, yes.
Yeah. This is a miserable job to have. Don't do it. Please don't do it. Promise me when you go away to college, you won't drink and you won't become an actor. No, he never said that. But I was cautioned.
Yeah.
And it didn't matter because I wasn't interested. I really wasn't. Although I had a great, it was fun doing plays in my backyard and it was great doing drama uh, in high school, which is something I totally relate to when I see the Mime Troupe's project
Mm.
kids,
Hmm.
participants, youths,
Youths.
um, youths.
Yeah.
It is a wonderful thing to be able to have an activity like that.
You know,
Really
I
good.
didn't know that like I said, I was talking to Ron Murier the other day that he was like one of the first people who really started YTP at the Mime Troupe. He said that,
Oh,
yeah,
I didn't know that.
I didn't know that. Yeah, so after he had left National Theater of the Deranged and he had done, he'd been working at ACT, and then he came and did a few shows with the Mime Troupe, and then somebody offered him a teaching gig, and he ended up teaching, middle school and high school students and students out at state and stuff. And then he said he was talking to Dan Chumley one day, and Chumley's like, "Man, I wish we could get more." They were doing workshops, but they weren't elongated programs. And Ron said, he was like, well, "You guys should just do a longer program. I can basically be part of the pipeline for students." And for years, he was the person who was whipping up the students to bring them and get them to apply for YTP with the Mime Troupe. And he said, "Yeah, so I
And
kind of started that program for you guys." And I was like, "Oh, cool. I did not know that."
I didn't know that either. Com- I went to his wedding, and
Yeah.
that was it. I never saw him again. I mean, we really only knew each other because of two things. Because of the Dragon Lady's Revenge, he
Hmm.
was in the
The
revival.
remount. Yeah.
Yeah, And then we both danced with Blanche Brown doing
Right.
affirmation.
Yeah, he
And
brought that up too. Yeah.
he was serious. He could go out, if you know what I mean, when he danced. The drums could take him out.
Take
So
him to another place.
he always had to wrap a,
Mhm.
a band around his forehead to keep the loa from not,
Yeah.
getting in there.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I've learned so much. I had no idea about all that stuff with Ron and him being the founding member of those darn accordions, which you can both praise and damn him for. Um, but back to you. So when you get out of high school and you're like, no, not acting. Where did you go? Did you go to college? And if so, where?
I went to the University of California at Berkeley.
Oh, really?
I,
How did that happen? Why didn't you go to SoCal school?
I didn't want to go to a SoCal school. And Berkeley, Berkeley looked great. I got it, Michael, back in those days, back in those days. If you had okay high school grades and stuff, and I didn't bother applying any other place. And
Hmm.
I thought, yeah, I'll go here. I picked Berkeley, and I can't imagine applying for schools these days.
We're doing that with our son right
Yeah,
now. And
yeah.
we have to apply, and it's just like, oh God, everything's so expensive and everything's so weird. So what was your major? What was your interest when you went to Berkeley?
Social sciences. I
Oh,
I had an integrated social science field major. That's what they called it,
hmm.
which meant that it was, anthropology, sociology, psychology, you know, an
And see,
assortment, like a sampler, an
mhm.
assortment.
It's such a big leap. I mean, I always think about that when people decide to go away to school,
Mhm.
that point where you're just like, I'm gonna go 400 miles away and go to school, you know. Oh, did you have to get a job while you were in Berkeley at college? Or did you have enough support?
I had support. I mean, my parents felt that it was their job to see me through an education, and an
Mhm.
education for them meant 4 years and then at least 2 more years. You had to go to a professional school too.
Mhm.
You know, getting a BA is nothing. You have to
Useless.
use this, really, darling, if you
Yeah.
want to. So anyway, they were prepared to do that, and I was going to Berkeley, and then I assumed I would go on to something else. I don't know where, but a state school in those days wasn't that expensive. It really wasn't.
No.
And
Well.
um, and it wasn't that expensive to live in an apartment, or in my case, for a couple of years, I lived at a co-op in
Oh,
Berkeley.
really?
Yeah, now a co-op, you know what I mean when I say a co-op.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the people who lived in the co-ops also worked in the
Hmm.
co-op. So I worked in the kitchen. I always worked in the kitchen, or I cleaned the bathrooms or whatever. But I usually had a kitchen job
Hmm.
at the kitchen, the big central kitchen. So I did that, which made a huge difference to what that. Well, you had to. That's why it was so cheap to live at a co-op.
Right. Because you've got jobs.
Yeah, me and Marie Cartier figured this whole thing out. We both went to Berkeley. We both lived in the co-ops.
Yeah.
Um, uh,
So now as you were studying at Berkeley, what were you taking?
and
Oh, go.
and as a junior,
Uh-huh.
I was an ASUC senator, which meant that that's Associated Students at the University of California. I sat in weekly Senate meetings, and I held weekly office hours, and I got paid for all that.
Wow.
So, yeah, so I did, in a sense, I worked. In graduate school, I actually did have a job.
But still, it's a school job, which is, and part of your education, you know, which is cool. Now, when you so when you were studying, now that you had given up on okay, I won't be a veterinarian when I get out of school, and now you're going to be a sociologist?
Well, that's the question. Do I want to be an academic, or do I want to do something like be a social worker, or something like that? By the end of my 4 years at Berkeley, I did kind of stagger back to the theater department, and I took a couple of acting classes, and I thought at the time, oh, what about, drama therapy? I had heard something about it, but I didn't know what it was. But I thought maybe there's some useful application for theater. And it was then, at the end of Berkeley. I can't mention Berkeley without mentioning the free speech movement.
Right.
It was a very, very exciting time to be young.
To be young.
And political. I mean, there was the civil rights movement, which was, there were things going on, but then there was the war, and there were things going on majorly with that around the campus. And
one of the things I'd always heard was that one of the things that sparked the student uprising at Berkeley was the students that had gone away for freedom rides in the summer, going off and registering voters and doing all this work, and then they spread and went back to their schools around the country, especially at Berkeley, with this completely different idea of citizenship. Now, did you know any of those folks? Did you how did that impact you?
Well, I didn't know them exactly. There was something at Berkeley called Slate. I don't know if you ever heard of Slate.
No.
It was formed in 1959, I think, and it was a political party, a student leftist political party on campus, which wanted to take sort of student participation and student government kind of seriously, that you take on serious issues, and that you relate to the greater, the greater world. So in a way, that was there already. And you are absolutely right. People came back from Freedom Summer and set up tables near the entrance, the Telegraph Street entrance to Berkeley, the campus, with informational tables, so you could read about what's going on, and and you could donate money. So there was dissemination and collection. That was already a little suspect, but I think the thing, and other people think, the thing that was really the tipping point for the administration is that in the election coming up, there was something called the Mumford Act. Do you know what that Fair
the
Housing
Mumford Act was, as I recall, the Mumford Act was because the Black Panthers had started to use openly carry weapons. And I think as I recall, I hope I'm not wrong.
Maybe Rumford. I think you're right. Maybe I'm thinking of Rumford. So
Mm.
there's something else that's not the one
Not
about
that.
not carrying guns. It had been legal to carry guns, right? And when Panthers
Yeah.
started doing it, they said it's no longer
Suddenly they're
illegal
like,
to carry.
no. Yeah.
Not that one. There was something else. It was a Fair Housing Act. I
Oh,
think it had
right. Yeah.
passed in 63, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And there was something on the ballot in the fall of 64 called Proposition 14.
Mm.
And there was a lot of organizing right around those little tables where the collection cans were, uh, defeat Proposition 14 organizing among the students.
Yes.
And
I've looked it up. The Rumford Fair Housing Act. That's what it
uh-huh.
was. Yes. Proposition 14, which was later declared unconstitutional by the Supreme Court in California in 66. Huh.
Well,
See, I can look these things up because
Proposition
I live
14,
in the future.
right? So Proposition 14, right, ended up
Yeah.
passed. And it ended up taking away the Rumford Act, not the Mumford Act, but the
Yeah.
Rumford. So there was student organizing around Proposition 14, and that, I think, as much as anything, brought the heat down on the administration to stop it. Enough already. This is not okay. This is not student. I mean, we could have people taking collections for the Oski Wow Wow senior soccer. It wasn't
Mm-hmm.
campus related. It had to do with off-campus stuff.
Hmm.
And so things went on from there.
Hmm.
Uh,
Now, were you involved politically yet, or were you still spectating?
well, yes, spectating. I did some core volunteering as a freshman. And I was a sophomore the year of the free speech movement, and um, that's when I really took the plunge. That's when I guess I can remember filling out something, a profile. Yes, we need a profile of what you think you are. And I had to choose, what was I? And I checked radical.
Really?
Yeah, I said, well, I think I'm a radical. Why, someone's on the phone.
Hmm. Wow.
I'm going to do this. I'm going to just,
Yeah.
I just answered it and cut them off.
Well, I'll teach them. So,
Uh, mm,
so what was that
so,
like? I mean, it didn't sound like Hollywood High was particularly political. And then, being a sophomore at Berkeley during the free speech movement, was it thrilling? Was it scary? Was it scary and thrilling?
it was totally thrilling. It was so exciting. Um, it, it felt like the real world. It felt important. It felt like, you know, students could make history too. Um, it was great, and it was serious. Uh, if I read fast enough, I would have been a more because I was also a serious student. I had work to do, and uh, there was plenty else to read, and I didn't read any of it. I mean, I wasn't your most knowledgeable uh, free speech movement participant, but I
Hmm.
was there. I got arrested.
Really? What was
And
that? What was that circumstance?
there was a day when the students went into Sproul Hall and just sat down. We had a big sit-in in
Hmm.
the administration building, and finally, after a while, the announcement came: you have you have a half hour, or 5 minutes, or whatever, to vacate the building. At which point, you'll be trespassing.
Hmm.
And hardly anybody left. I think Bruce Barthol, who I did not know at the time. I think he was there, and he had to leave because he was still a kid. He was, I at least was 18, and he was younger than that. So he had
That's right.
to get out.
So now, being arrested at a protest, what was that like? How are your folks on that one? Were they
Okay.
proud? Were they like?
They, this is when people communicated by letters.
Yes.
Not phone.
So things take time.
So, yeah. So I would write letters, but I wasn't necessarily saying what was. And now today, we all sat around we sat around the police car where Jack Weinberg was. Do you happen to know this part of the scenario? I mean, the story, the saga, the free speech movement saga.
With the yes.
I was there and sitting around the car, but I don't think I wrote home about that. So maybe as things developed, I didn't exactly share that with my parents. I was probably still writing about what I cooked in the co-op kitchen or something.
So when you got arrested, you guys were, how long were you held? Overnight?
For a few hours. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Well,
So you didn't
and
have to ask folks for bail.
We were released on our own recognizance. I don't know. I know I had to let them know, and I can't remember if it's because I suddenly needed some money. But they, they were okay with it. I think they asked me to please explain what I was doing. Tell me what, state your position.
Yeah.
And so then I had to write a really long letter about all that. But that was fun.
And they were fine with it ultimately because you explained it?
I explained it. They accepted it.
So this is when you were undergrad. And well, I always wondered, what was it like? People always talk about that the free speech movement, that moment in history, and challenging the state and challenging the school and challenging all this stuff. You still got to go to class, and then after that period's kind of not over, but kind of tailing off, you still have to go to class. You still want to graduate from this institution, and it's an institution. So what is that like to, you're like, the man is hold me down. And then you got to go in and there's the man teaching you sociology or whatever. And you still need good grades.
Yeah. The faculty was on the student side.
Okay.
The Senate, the academic Senate, if I'm remembering right, voted to support the students. Okay. So, it was. So
it wasn't harsh.
No.
You were still dealing with the same issues, especially if you're taking sociology. I guess you'd be talking about a lot of the same stuff. So.
And statistics. I had a statistics class that semester that I was really struggling in. Really struggling. And the free speech movement actually made some tutoring available. I sort of like people involved, you put out the word help, students who can use your help. And I got some tutoring. And I ended up passing statistics thanks to the tutoring, probably. A D is considered passing.
That is passing. That is, before it says barely, in really small words, barely passing.
Right.
So So when you graduated, did you do grad school?
Hmm. Yeah, I didn't know what I was going to do. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I have to mention, there was somebody who I went to high school with who knew me, although we didn't hang out. She'd been in Chicago. She just came back to Berkeley. Um, and somebody from the organization that she was working with in Chicago was coming to California to check out San Francisco State because that's where she was going to go. She'd been at Carnegie. She was doing something with this organization, and now she was resuming her undergrad work at San Francisco State, and she wanted to check it out. And she was staying with my friend, not friend, but friend that I knew from Hollywood, who knew me as you know, from Hollywood High School for an
Right.
actor type. So she got in touch with me and she said, I'm having dinner. Please come and meet my friend, who became a lifelong friend, Melody James,
Oh, wow.
who was a member of the San Francisco Mime Troupe for years and years.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, anyway, sh we hit it off right away. And she said, you know, she had been working with this organization in Chicago called Join. It
Mm.
was, or you know, they were doing not. I don't think it was Saul Alinsky type organizing, but they were organizing.
Mm-hmm.
And he had her brother was a big shot there, and she had come and she was doing. She set up a little theater for the folks who lived in uptown, and they did shows about welfare and you know access to affordable housing and stuff. And she was hoping that maybe I'd go to Chicago and take it over because she was leaving. And
Mm.
said, I don't think I'm going to do that. Why don't you come to Chicago and just see? Come to Chicago, just check it out. So I was graduating, and I just did. I thought, well, I'll take a little graduation present to me. I'm going to go to Chicago. So I hung out there for a couple of weeks. It was great, and that's when Melody and I became fast friends. And I didn't stay in Chicago, but I came back to California, and I had to decide where I was going to go to school. And like as usual, I didn't, you know, this was not. I didn't know what I wanted to do,
Mm-hmm.
so I just went on to state. I was right there, and I went in with what did they call it? A undeclared degree.
Yeah. You could do that
Okay.
for, I didn't know you could do that for post grad. Huh. That's
I know, I know, but I did. It was not like an undeclared minor, but it had something to do with the degree was in the word. But anyway, I wasn't striving for a particular degree. So I
mm-hmm.
thought, well, I'll take some stuff in the social welfare school and do that. Or I'll go back into the social sciences, and I guess that would mean an academic career, but I'll do that. Or maybe I'll check out the theater department because I might do theater and community organizing
Mm-hmm.
or drama therapy or something. It never was Hollywood.
Mm-hmm.
So I was headed for graduate school at State, and I was accepted, and I had no degree objective. That's what it.
Oh.
Um, uh, and I screwed up the date that I was supposed to be there and enroll. I came late, so I went to the social welfare school, and because I wasn't in the social welfare department, classes had filled up and there was no room for me because I wasn't in the department. And I went to, I don't know, anthropology, sociology. I went somewhere and said, okay, I'd like to take these classes. And I said, no, I'm sorry, they're filled up. And because you're not in this department, there was also a social sciences type field study department. So because you're not in the department, there's no room for you. So
no room.
Slam. All that was left was the theater department. And
there's always room in theater.
You bet there is. Anyway, I felt pretty defeated by then. And the room where everybody was signing up with this big, I don't know, I don't know where it was, the gym or something like that. There were no other students. There was some lovely woman sitting at a table, and I said, Mama, I just went over and I kind of sat down and I said, well, I don't know what to do. Here's my thing. We talked for a little while and she said, my dear, here's what you're going to do. You're going to get your master's in theater arts. Let's sign you up. And so that's what I did. I got a master's in theater arts. And that's my graduate degree. And boy, was my stepfather horrified.
I was going to say. They're thrilled after all of that. Just, the magnet just pulls you back in.
All right, well, maybe you can teach. Could you teach? But I was at state during the Third World Student Strike. So it was another experience, academic experience of student activism, which really characterized my time at state, I'd say.
Right. So
did
you feel like did you still have that in the back of your head? Like, well, I still could be an academician, or were you just like, I have no idea where this is going?
Kind of with that one, but feeling more and more part of a movement, and that I wanted somehow to, be of service in that way. When during the strike, the theater department organized, and as did Melody and I, we were there. And
is Melody she was going to the school also?
Yes, she was an undergraduate.
Right. She came out to go there, right?
We were, I always sort of thought we were kind of like leadership, but I think many people thought they were leadership. But one thing that we did do, we wrote a play. We both had directing classes, different classes, but we both thought, let's collaborate on a play. We'll co-direct. My God, they haven't written the play that's worthy of us. Right. So we wrote a play, which was really a pastiche, a montage of scenes, largely scenes from other plays, and some original scenes, and original music with original songs. We had a little band on the side. We had a strobe light. We for the revolution scene, there was just a lot of bodies writhing and the strobe light going, and it was the history of the human race through the lens of rebellion. And the name of the play was Rebellion. And that's
How'd it go?
that's it was great. It was great. The students who were in it adored it. Our professors were very taken with it.
Mhm.
I used to remember what one said. I can't remember now, but it was something like, Andrea, that was brilliant, brilliant, something like that.
Something,
Um,
something, something like brilliant. Yeah.
something like that. Um, so the second year, which was the year of the strike, when many of us were going to classes, but they were being held off campus.
Mhm.
Um, and many of us were doing things through our department to support the strike. So the
Mhm.
drama department was doing stuff. And our little group, which I kind of remember being the cast of Rebellion, uh, created these little agitprop shows that we took around to other campuses. Agitprop shows explaining the issues of the strike.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
Um, and then after the big bust, Melody and I remounted Rebellion and we took it around San Francisco, and we had a week of shows every night. And we went to mainly church basements and
Mhm.
performed. Uh, and we took in, box office was fabulous, and we took in a lot of money, and
Mhm.
that went right to the Strike Defense Fund.
Mm.
And that was my really the agitprop and doing Rebellion was my graduate school education. That was really
Mm.
my MA reflected that
Right.
as much as anything.
Wow. So you went from, I guess, acting to agitprop, political, change the world, revolution, rebellion theater.
Yeah, right, right. And then I graduated without a real clear idea of what I wanted to do. But I left my boyfriend and I traveled, and we went we went to Europe and then east, traveling through Turkey and Iran and Afghanistan and India, and ended up in Nepal. Is where we ended up. That wasn't our destination, but we both ended up studying music in Nepal.
Really?
I did. I studied Indian classical singing, and he
Uh-huh.
studied guitar. Uh, and we were away for a year. And while I thought, well, when I get back, I'll know. I'll just know when I get back what I want to do. If I don't decide, I can always do what I can always do what Melody James did. I can join the mime troupe,
So
which
the
was
good, so she joined by that time.
yes.
Mm.
And he joined right before I left on this trip. She joined, and I was gone for a year. And when I came back, I didn't know what I wanted to do exactly. So great, I'll join the mime troupe. And at that point, Melody, I don't think she was underground, but she wasn't there anymore.
Hmm.
She was gone. When
Hmm.
I called up and said, hi, can I speak to Melody? She said, Melody isn't here anymore.
Hmm.
And I wasn't expecting that. I had dinner with Ronnie and Sandy of Mime Troupe, you know,
Yeah.
the king and queen of the Mime Troupe.
Hmm.
And so I knew them ever so teeny tiny. So I said, you know, well, Melody, do you know where she is? No, have no idea where Melody is. I said, could I talk to Sandy?
Hmm.
Sandy's not here anymore. Oh, well, can I talk to Ronnie? Well, Ronnie's really not here anymore. And
Yeah.
but I think I think I was already, I think people, my guess is that people pricked up their ears a little bit when somebody here is trying to contact these people from, you know,
A year ago.
a year ago. So anyway, I said, well, are you auditioning people? I want to audition. And they said, why, yes, we are. We're actually holding auditions tomorrow. Oh, and then they were leaving on tour the day after. So it was like, uh,
Gosh.
so I, so I memorized a scene from Some Like It Hot, the movie,
Mm-hmm.
and came in the next day, and of course went up on my lines as I always do. But that was okay. I said something
Clearly it
about,
worked.
pardon me, it worked
I said clearly it worked because
clearly. Well,
yeah.
no, I was sort of embarrassed, and I said, "Oh, I'm sorry." I must say, but my mouth was very dry, and I said something about my lips sticking to my teeth, and Steve Friedman laughed out loud. So that kind of broke the ice, and
Hmm.
I finished and well, and
What was
had
that
no
show?
problem that they were going to go out on tour with.
Yeah.
They were leaving the next day with the Independent Female
Oh, independent female. Hmm.
and Seize the Time.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
So that was the double bill that they were
Right.
touring to the Midwest with.
Hmm.
I wasn't on tour, of course, but I made it. I was I passed the audition
Mm-hmm.
and
So you
stayed
had
home.
just got back in town, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So you came
Right.
back, auditioned, got in, and left town again the next day.
No, they left on tour.
Oh.
I stayed behind with the home team.
Oh, okay. Whew.
And yes, so I was so good at memorizing lines overnight that I, no.
You never
Uh,
tell what people need. So now you went in and you were like, well, you auditioned as an actor, of course. And so now being in the home team with the company that's gone out, what were you guys doing back home?
creating a kids show.
Oh,
We did a puppet show.
mm-hmm. Was that
It was
was
great.
that the Black Panther puppet show?
No, that puppet show happened before my time.
Mm-hmm.
This was uh, this was a story about a tree,
Ah,
and it was about kind of about tree conservation.
mm-hmm.
And it
So
was
were you a puppeteer for the show, or were you writing, or what?
I made two
Mm-hmm.
puppets. I made two puppets, hand puppets, and I was in the pit.
Oh, really? What did you
Hmm.
play?
A violin, I
When did
must
that
say.
come up?
And that was my instrument.
Huh. When did you study that? You didn't talk about it.
I studied that in Canoga Park.
Oh, so from when you were a small child, you were playing violin.
My childhood instrument.
Huh. Had you been studying it all that time through middle school and high school and everything?
No, I moved away from my teacher, and so I moved away from lessons. And
Oh.
I kind of thought I wanted to play the piano anyway,
Mm-hmm.
but my stepfather was seeing clients at our house, and no, you can't be playing the piano while he's doing this. And anyway, I don't think they wanted to hear me practicing, so that was fine. I didn't do it.
But you had a chance to come back to violin
Yeah,
after all those years.
After all those years, right? Exactly.
Wow, it's another example of everything you learn may become useful if you
You
keep your
know,
eyes open. Now,
that
Andrea,
is right.
we have just gotten to the part where you have just gotten to the mime troupe. We're at 90 minutes.
And it's time to say goodbye.
I know, which means I'll have to do a second half of an interview with you. When I ask people, I'm like, I'm going to ask you all these questions. I always go, it's going to be 20 minutes. We're not going to talk long. It's not going to take long. It's a lot. So we're
Well,
going to have to wrap
I'm
this up now and then
not
set yet another time.
okay. I want to say, Michael,
Yes.
that you're a very I didn't expect to have anything more to say than about 10 minutes worth. Really? What are we doing? You'll be done with me. And I did notice that your other guests had been on for an hour and a half or so. God, you're going to have to really wrap it up after 20 minutes. I'm telling you. But you are a very good interviewer. You
Oh, thank
are.
you.
You kind of
Thanks.
you're
Well, it's
paying.
so interesting. I mean, people that I've known for all this time that I'm really interested in. It's like having the two veterinarian parents in Canoga Park. That's really interesting. All of this stuff and how people become who they are. And that's why I always tell people it's not about your time at the mime troupe. It's about who you are up to that point, and then there's mime troupe, and then who are you since then, which is what we will have to talk about next time. So I have to
Definitely.
sign off now.
Okay. Thank you, Michael.
So
Bye.
thank you so much, and thanks for being on the MimeCast, and we will look forward to seeing the second half of the rest of your life next time. Thanks a lot, Andrea.